Hang on tight. I will begin the session very shortly. Yeah? Okay. So meanwhile, if you've just started to come into the room, please help us to rename your profile account. That would be really helpful. I really like seeing the participants' names, like actual names, because when it's not your actual name, I feel like I'm talking to like AI, Gen AI, or a robot. But that's really helpful when I see your names. Makes me smile actually when I see your names on screen, especially when I've seen you already in the past 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 Fridays. We've spent quite a bit of time this February offering this three-part webinar series to everyone. Okay. So I'll be beginning now. So thank you all for joining me in today's crash course on how to think visually, communicating effectively. This is the last webinar in the three-part webinar series that we were offering professionals this February. Like yourselves, a lot of you have learned about business storytelling. We've done data storytelling and visualization, and today it's more about visual persuasion. Okay, what is that about? Or how do we create effective visual presentations? So you already learned how to get your key insights from the data visualization crash course. And then we did some narration structures in the last Friday. And today, how do we create the slides to support maybe your key message in your presentations? How can we tackle overloaded slides? How can we create slides that can convince and also captivate the audience? And how can we explore the layout? So like designing our slides in a very functional manner. Okay, functional manner. That is the key thing that we will be learning today. So if you're ready, just give me a thumbs up reaction. If everyone is ready, today is Friday. I know, slow start. Yes? Okay. I see some thumbs up. Awesome. Okay, so if you haven't met me, my name is Christine. I'm an ACLP certified trainer here with HighSpark. And I think I've been sharing my profile for the last 2 weeks. So bear with me, yeah. For the last 10 to 15 years, so I was doing marketing, sales, PR, and BD. And I saw myself switching in the adult education sector. And why is that so? Because I thought that I could impart all of the lessons that I learned on my real life experiences with my learners. So that is what I hope to do again today in today's session. So at HighSparks, we see that this agency, right, how it's quite different from the rest is through its frameworks. So definitely we have a lot of frameworks that we will share in today's session as well. And this is actually what we definitely practice what we preach. So you will see it in some of the examples I'll be giving you today. If you do not already know the agency, so it started with the design and consultancy arm, but that has now paved way for the training arm. So we do a lot of training and programs. Yesterday, I was just training a government agency, so one full day training, and it was all about how stories stick. How can we make stories stick? But these are actually frameworks that we use in our client side as well. So how do we improve, say, their pitch decks, etc.? And that has now what we do in our training sessions. We will do some sharing, proven tested frameworks that we have already done so far in the last few years. Okay, so I have also a little bit of a exclusive item for you right at the very end, because we'll be having a sharing again from one of my colleagues in the consultancy arm who will be telling us an actual case study that we have helped to add value through our frameworks. So today we will try to go beyond the theories. And as promised, there's always a little cheat sheet for everyone at the very end of today's webinar. Okay, so stay tuned, hang on tight till the very end to get this cheat sheet on visual persuasion. I know for the past week, I've opened with a question. We always start with a question. So what is it that you find most challenging about designing slides? So if you can kindly type in the chat, what do you find most challenging about designing slides? I'll really appreciate it, because this is a way for us to establish that we have some concerns, and therefore we can try to address it through the case study examples later on. Okay, so just help me to type in the chat. What do you think is the most challenging about designing slides? Okay, is there anything about designing slides that you feel, oh, I'm not comfortable doing it at all? Okay. Okay, Jocelyn says, working around the corporate template. Oh, this is such a common, I know this is such a common pain that I experienced as well before because we have brand guide and then it makes you think how to be creative when it comes to doing our presentation slides. Is there even a way around it, right? Because we have to follow a certain template. Kim Ho, I'm a verbal communicator, not a visual communicator. Oh, okay, I get you. This is what I was telling my participants yesterday in the training. How often as presenter we like to dump all the information on a slide. It's very text heavy on text because we think this is all the message that I need to tell them. And then in the end, it's difficult to make it visual for them, right? I understand you. Don't worry, I have a slide for you later on how we can synthesize these points. Okay. And Jocelyn also says time consuming, trying to perfect the visual. So is it really true that if we have our designing our slides, are we supposed to keep thinking about the aesthetic? Is the aesthetic really that important when it comes to designing our slide? We'll see that very soon. Dale says degree of details required and how not to bore the audience. So how do we not bore the audience with our details? Okay. So I just want to validate everyone that these are very common problems that we do face when it comes to designing effective visual presentations. Now, how do we tackle all of this? I actually have real case study examples for you to go through later on, and I hope that we can tackle these issues one by one. So I do have a framework as well that I will be sharing with you very, very shortly. But before I do that, I just want to get a sensing. What is design? What do you think is design? Or what does design mean to you? When you see the word design, what do you think when you see of this word? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Okay, so just type in the chat. What do you think design means to you? Okay, so just type in the chat. What do you think design means to you? So I'm just going to read the messages that will come in. Okay, let's see what are some of the responses. So Kate says visuals. Taylor says design means the look. Jocelyn, aesthetics of something. Okay, aesthetics of something. Okay, so what is design really? Especially when it comes to designing presentation slides. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the designs that I will be showing you and tell me whether it works for you or if it doesn't. Okay, let's do some exercise. Take a look at this. Why is this considered a not so good design? Or why do you think this is a good design? Okay, I think it's an infographic poster and it's talking about some of the key things in society or social inventions that we have, sustainability, some ideas. So do you think that this is a good design, not so good design, and why? Okay, why? So just help me to type in the chat. All right, just keep your responses coming in and I'll be reading it very shortly. Kate says, too cluttered, no focal point. Jocelyn says, it's colorful, useful for segregating information, but it seems like it's overloaded with info. Okay. June says, too many color. Yeah, I think I agree with you. Too many color. Bharat say, too much infographic in one page. Too much information, I guess, on one page. And QLSM, too complicated. Don't know where to start. Yes. So I've seen a mixed reaction when I've presented this infographic before because some of us like very bright colors. You think colorful might be a good thing for a presentation. But when you have a lot of information to share, it actually takes away the visual hierarchy. So how do you guide your audience's eyes? it's all fighting for your audience's attention. So this might not be necessarily a very good design because although it's colorful and bright, it might be difficult for the person to actually read the information. Okay, so this design is more, I guess, for aesthetic. Okay, this is what I would call an aesthetic, is meant for aesthetic purpose. Okay, so I will go on to the next example. So let me know if you think this is a much better way of presenting information in an infographic. Considering if we have to follow a brand guide, because I think this examples, it appears to be following some sort of brand guide. Do you think that this is a good example of design? Do you think it's effective? If you are the audience, what do you think? So just type in the chat, what are some of your thoughts when you see this design? Okay, just type in the chat for me, what do you think of this design? Nim says there's a flow from top to bottom. Yeah, we see that flow from number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It kind of guides your eyes on how to digest that information. Okay, Taylor says quite numerical sequence to guide order of reading, quite number. Okay. Jocelyn, I can follow the flow of the process. QLS, yes, a much better design. Information is very well organized. Kim Ho says the color contrast makes it hard to, sorry, didn't see that. The color contrast may be hard to read. Okay, maybe, yeah. Okay. So Olivia, nice visual, but colors may be a bit dull. All right. So thank you all for sharing. So I just want to share this example to you because I thought it was good in a way that it helps your audience's eyes. It's not confusing. You can guide them where to look at the information. Maybe, yes, I agree with you. A better use of color would actually help to improve this infographic poster. Okay. So let's take a look at the next example that I have for you. What do you think is not working in this design? What is not working in this design? Okay, just type in the chat for me. What do you think is not working in this design? I have another example for you here. Just help me to type in the chat. What do you think is not working in this design? What's not working for you when you look at this slide? I mean this either a slide or a poster. Okay, font is too small. It's quite overwhelming. Yes. Scattered messages, don't know where to start. Yeah, I agree with Kate. When I first saw this, I was also thinking to myself, where do I look first? Is it the change observer? Is it the places? I thought it was places because the font was really huge. And then I was thinking to myself, what are all the green sections and the orange, the colors, what it meant. So my eyes went all over the place. So I agree with you. It's quite difficult to know where to start. So I think this is an example of how design was probably used for aesthetic purposes. I think it looks quite nice, but it might not be functional because we had a difficulty looking at the key messages. Okay. So I think the next one would be a much better example for everybody. So this is quite common. I think this design will work better, say if we have an upcoming event, for instance, right? It's very clear. You can see that we have a clear header on top. When is the event? What is happening? And then what are some of the key points at the bottom? So what you see here is that there's a very clear message. It's less cluttered. I I would say there's a good use of color and shapes, but again, that could be subjective. But the most important thing here that I would say is it guides our eyes where to look at, right? So at the very top, we start from the top. As human beings, we tend to read information from the top, right? And then left to right. That is usually the usual natural flow of how we see things. However, if there's very striking things on your slide, for instance, that might be the first thing that people will notice as well. Okay, so how do we work with that visual hierarchy? Now, what separates design from art is that design is meant to be functional. So what do we mean by functional? So again, being functional, it's our intention to make our design right, for our presentations. Make it purposeful and meaningful. So not just for the sake of creating it so that it's aesthetic for everyone, right? Not just, oh, my slides will look pretty, so I will add this splash of color, I will use this font. Do you really need that? Or is there another way that you can amplify your key messages so that it's easy for your audience to digest the information? Okay, so keep that in mind because the next part that I'll be going through is what is the purpose of your presentation? Okay, what is really the purpose of your presentation? Can you give me an example of what is a typical purpose of your presentations? What do you usually do presentations for? So just type in the chat for me. What's an example of a purpose of presentation? What do you usually do for your presentations? What's the purpose? Okay, just type in the chat. It says to persuade and convince. Okay, when you say persuade and convince, are you trying to pitch? Is that is that correct? Are you trying to pitch or sell an idea? Okay, QLSM, to convey message in an easier manner. Okay, Jocelyn, communicate new information. So Jocelyn, I think you're trying to refer to like updating, maybe like updates, right? Okay, Kim Ho says tell a story. Dale says reports on performance. Okay, we do report on performance. Is that quarterly? Is that yearly, annual, or monthly basis, right? Okay, Kate says yes, pitching is one of them. So I think the most typical purpose of our presentations in day-to-day corporate life is to update, right? For updating, I think it's quite common that we use it for updating stakeholders, internal stakeholders, our external partners, etc. And the other most typical purpose that I've seen from most of the decks is for pitching, right? So to sell an idea, to sell the brand, to sell the services to someone else. And this is where I would say not all presentations should always look like Steve Jobs. It really depends on the purpose that we're trying to do, how our presentations will therefore look like. So, first question I always think about is are you trying to provide information? Is it straight to the point? Or are we trying to pitch a story? Is it about the brand or the idea that we want to sell? Okay, because this table that I have here, the axis that I have here is very helpful for you to identify based on your purpose. Then what kind of presentation should you create? Okay, so if we have a high level story to sell, we know it has to be very visual. That's typically what a keynote speech is for. If it's a typical corporate presentation, so we know that it is very detailed, straight to the point, it will probably have a lot of text or information to update our stakeholders or maybe do some report. Is this something that they need to refer to after the end of the whole sharing session, right? So corporate presentations tend to have more detail. Okay, so where it might just vary is that how much text or how much visuals, right? But this is how the axis here will work, okay? So think about again, what's the purpose of your presentation? And then you will know what kind of presentation should we first create, okay? So I'll go on to the next part, which is, do you need to create a slide or a slide document? Okay, so I have a participant yesterday who asked me this question. Christine, I actually am the type who needs to maybe not necessarily have to share all the updates in an actual presentation with my boss, but he tends to like an attachment to the email, right? On the email to tell him all of the top line things and then some of the details inside. So should I do a slide for him or a slide document? So I said, actually, it would be better if it's a slide document because you might have a section where, or segments even, where you have to explain what you were trying to say in that main key message. So key message one, you have a lot of supporting information. So then you might have more pages, right? It might look like more of a slide document report. So that was my suggestion. But otherwise, if you're presenting like what I'm doing today, right? Use this if you want the room's attention to be on you. Okay, use this to support the messages or the key ideas that you want to present to your audience, right? So while I'm talking to you now, I'm using this slide to actually help me to present to you the key messages, right? And you can use a slide document if you are distributing these, say, as a reading material or as a reference. Later on, after the presentation, right? Once the presentation is done, I can send a slide document version over to you. So again, when do we use a keynote speech? Okay, so if you know that it is there to help to support you, you might, in your narration, in your presentation, then consider this. And typically it will have a non-traditional headline. Okay, so because if you see my slide here, I don't really have a lot of text or information, but the main key message becomes my headline, which is about cyber crimes costing Singapore an estimated 1.25 billion, according to Security Report. Now that becomes my headline. It's quite brief and concise because I have to, of course, rely on the presenter to narrate what is happening. What is this key message all about? There's typically a one big hero image. We will try to splash on a giant visual for the people to see. And typically this is a relevant image that we can use for that slide or that key message. And again, yeah, relying on the speaker to narrate. So this is what keynote speech is all about. And that is quite different from a slide document. So slide document, again, there's a headline at the top, very typical, right? Where we see 60 pages, sometimes corporate documents, corporate presentation, sorry. And you can also realize that there's so many elaborated points. There's no real estate really for huge visuals, but we can still put some visuals on it, say like icons. Icons can replace giant visuals and still try to provide more context for the information that you are trying to provide. And it's pretty self-explanatory. So even if I don't go through all this information, if I send it to you via email, you'll be able to read it, refer to this document, and be able to understand the information. Okay, so there's really no one size that fits all, but I feel that you have to think first, what is the purpose of your presentation? And then from there, you'll be able to tell yourself, oh, I need to create a slide, or maybe I need to create a slide document or a keynote speech. And that should be the main foundation before you actually design your presentation. Okay? So if we are all clear, I'll be moving on to the proprietary framework when it comes to our own proprietary framework, when it comes to structuring how a visual presentation might look like. So if you recall your concerns earlier, maybe you have a cluttered slides, too many information, no time to even create your slides. How do you choose the content and the images? Okay, if we wanted to make it visual, how do we do that? So I have a very good process that we call the SPIL process. So introducing to you SPIL. Okay, SPIL stands for story, point, imagery, layout, and the look. Okay, so if this is the first time you're seeing this, if you've never been to our trainings, this is the framework that you can take away with you at the end of today's session. So this framework definitely can guide you on a step-by-step process to create a very visual presentation. So how it begins is starting with the story. What is the story that you want to tell? Right? So what is the story that we want to narrate? And once we know what is the story that we want to tell, there are actually key points or key messages that we will have in our story, right? In our narration, in our presentation. So that's the P, the point. So what are your key points? Maybe you have sub-points to support it as well. And then this is where relevant imagery can come in. Okay, after we have our points, we can find relevant imagery for the points. Okay, choosing the best images that can help to add context to the points. After we have chosen the relevant imagery, now the next step is to think about the layout. Explore possible layouts. There are proven layouts out there that can work visually, how people can look through the information and easily digest the information. And lastly, the final touch will be the overall look. Again, designing with a purpose in mind rather than just being aesthetic. So let's take a look at an example how we can apply this framework. Okay, I'll give you a generic example. So here, the story and the point, it's about technology posing risks to finance industry. So here are the top 3 risks. So I have all the points listed down on the slide, right? Very, very clear. So you will see here, it looks blank because this is how we try to do our presentations first. Only the points that are very important, we keep it on our slide. And then we will work on our imagery. So in imagery, what we should do is to look for images that are relevant to each of our points if possible. But sometimes we might only have a space for one key visual, right? The one big hero image maybe. So here I have one image that I felt was quite relevant to the context, right, of cybersecurity. And this is what I chose. And then some icons for my points, okay? So that was the next step, imagery. And then we will work out a layout. So when you look at this, the layout, what it appears to be now is headline on top, my 3 points at the bottom, and then I'm using what you call, right, a grid. We have the 9 grid, right? And I'm using 1/3 of the space for my image. So I blow up that image, so that is where your eyes will probably go to. Maybe that is my intention for you to see that, okay, I can associate this with cybersecurity. When you see this image, you will likely feel that the presentation or this slide is about cybersecurity. And then what we will do next is to go through the look. Okay, so the look, you can actually change the color based on your brand guide. Maybe you have a brand guide colors that you need to use. You can even use a light version. And I also have an option here if you want to use a dark theme. Okay, so this is just how we play around with the look. All right, so I've shown you how the process looks like. Now let's move on to breaking down this build process and showing you some of the examples of the common pitfalls that we face when it comes to designing our slide. So starting with point, okay, so starting with the point, the first common pitfall in visual presentation. So take a look at this slide. I'll give you a minute to look at it and just type in the chat for me. What do you think is not working for you on this slide? Okay. What is it about this slide that you find it difficult to digest or difficult for you to understand? Okay. So just help me to type in the chat. What is it on this slide that is not working for you? Okay. So just give you a minute to look at the slide and just type in the chat. What is it about this slide? This is a common pitfall. This is one of the common issues that we face when it comes to point. Okay, just help me to type in the chat. Okay, I see some of the responses coming in. Okay, QLSM says, too many words, no focal point. Kim Ho says, I'm only looking at the elephant. Lol, it looks sad. Oh no. Okay, yeah, I do agree with you. Kind of looks very sad. Kate says, too wordy, takes too much time to read. Absolutely. Richard, too many words. I agree with you. Kate says it lacks the shocking and urgency impact. I agree with you as well. Barasi, just for the sake of adding elephant, then that they have added an elephant, right? So you're actually all quite right. You're all quite right when it comes to this slide. There is what we call the information dump. This is what we do when we tend to dump information on a slide. And once that happens, we know that it will be very hard for audiences to read. But sometimes we fail to synthesize, to summarize the information for our audience, right? So what should we do? what we should do is to actually think about how all of this information, is it really important that they have to be on that slide? Or can I just draw out all the key themes? Maybe each point is one key theme. There's one main idea. And then if I really want to provide more information, am I able to put it in my speaker notes instead? Because if you need to send this deck to external stakeholders or to your stakeholders, your speaker notes can also be attached in that PDF. Okay, it can be part of the appendix if it's not important on that slide. So am I able to summarize it? So think first of what is the clear key message and see where we can summarize, where we can cut down the words so that it is easy for our audience to read and understand the key points. Next thing here that we see is the elephant, right? My God, if we're still using this kind of photo for our presentations, like one of you has mentioned, it looks quite sad. It might not even bring the message to life. What can we do with imagery, right? So in terms of this kind of imagery I have given you, it's kind of visually dated. What we should do then is to find images that are, I would say, try to make your deck more alive. How can we make that happen? So I will show you the example on to the next slide. So how can we further improve this slide? Okay. So here I have a very clear key message right at the top. Based on the information that I gathered from the original slide, over 33,000 elephants killed for ivory annually. So this is what I think the key message is, right? It's quite impactful, it's insightful, it tells you a story, right? Over 33,000 elephants killed for ivory annually. And you see here, the 4 points that we had earlier, actually, it can be summarized into a key theme or a key message. So the first one, killed for tasks, and then I have some of the description, then driven by demand, smuggled in foreign markets, profits finance terrorism, and wars. Okay, so that is what we did with the points. If you take a look at the photo that we chose here, this is a relevant image of an elephant, right? I don't know how we found this image, right? It looks kind of sad for the elephant as well, because if we're talking about how elephants are getting killed annually, I think this is a very impactful image that was provided. And then we also have icons that we can use to just add context to the key points. So this is what we did in order to help to improve that slide. What if it's not a presentation and you want to use the same information but in a different medium? That is possible as well. And here the clear call to action will become very different. Your key message becomes a clear call to action. So change their narrative because, there's dwindling numbers of elephants. And you will see I have a couple more examples for you. Okay, here's another one. This is more impactful because we have a very clear crisis now that's happening, right? So let's change the story. Let's support the elephant crisis fund. And then we have one here that has another version of it where it talks about a very clear call to action on top. That is my main key message now. I want you to save the elephants. And why is that so? Because each year, tens of thousands of elephants are killed for their ivory tusks. And then I provide you with the other supporting information, which happens to be a problem solution statement. Okay, what you see here is a problem solution statement. And then here I have another format that you can use. So again, link back to the purpose of your output. Does it have to be a slide format all the time? Or would you rather use a poster, an infographic style? Would that be more efficient in grabbing attention? Okay, so just think about that. Take a pause and think about it. Does my slide really need to be a slide, or it can be in a different medium, in a different format? Okay. Now, what's the difference between decluttering and synthesizing? Okay, what's the difference between decluttering and synthesizing? So decluttering, what can I remove without losing the meaning? How can I eliminate the filler words, the redundant phrases? Synthesizing is how can I group related ideas? How can I use sections or categorize the content in a digestible format? Okay, so think about it. What we just did with that elephant exercise, that slide, is to synthesize the information. So let's take a step on the exercise in the next slide. I'll give you a couple of minutes to read it, summarize, and synthesize. Okay, so read it, summarize, and synthesize. How can you synthesize this information into a more succinct one sentence, one line? Just type in the chat. How can you summarize and synthesize it? What's your suggested one-liner for this? So take this moment to just read it and then summarize and synthesize this information. And then type in the chat your suggested synthesized point on how it should look like on a slide. Okay, so I'll give you just a minute to do that. So feel free to type in the chat. Okay, so I'll give it more few seconds. Just keep your responses coming in, and then we'll look through what are some of the suggestions that you've provided me. Okay, so how can we synthesize this line? Due to rapid technological advancements, our industry is experiencing a significant shift requiring businesses to adopt new strategies to remain competitive. It's a mouthful, really, it's a mouthful. How can we make it less worthy? How can we synthesize this? Okay. All right, so I see some of the responses streaming in. Okay, so we have Kim Ho. He says, strategize to stay ahead of the technology curve. Okay, kinds of encapsulates that message. Okay, new strategies to stay ahead of disruption. Okay, I saw the edit. Thank you, Kate, for sending that. Shen Ying says, new business strategies required in the midst of technology disruption. Okay. Dela says, adopt new business strategies to stay competitive and ahead of rapid industry and technological changes. I believe y'all have given me very good synthesized points, because actually my example is quite similar to what you have. So what I did here was technology is reshaping our industry, adapt or fall behind. It's pretty similar. I think we all had similar mindset, and I like that you all try to keep it in that one line, one sentence. So this is an exercise how you can actually summarize and synthesize your points in order to make your slides less wordy. And where needed, if you really need to put more points, is it possible to just put it in the appendix, in the reference point at the bottom, or you can put it in your speaker notes? Okay, if that's something that you can do, then great. Okay, that's just one alternative. All right, so now we will be moving into the next common pitfall, which is in regards to imagery. Now let's do a mini exercise. When it comes to this imagery, right? Think of a chicken. Please type in the chat. What's the first thing that you thought of when I asked you to think of a chicken? What type of chicken did you see or visualize? Okay, type in the chat. What's the first thing that you saw or visualized when I asked you to think of a chicken? Okay, I'll just wait for the rest to just type in the chat. What do you think? What's the first thing that comes into mind when you see the word chicken? Did you visualize a particular type of chicken even? Okay. So Taylor says hen on top of eggs. Okay, hen on top of eggs, an actual chicken. Kim Ho Bok Bok. Is this the sound that you remember, or is it you actually saw the word bok bok, like be okay, be okay? Okay. Kate says KFC. Okay, KFC was actually the most common response that I gathered in some of the previous workshop. People will immediately associate chicken with KFC chicken. I don't know why, but that used to be me too before. Okay, then we have chicken rice. Okay, Clement says chicken rice. I hope we're not too hungry yet. I hope you had breakfast. I see. Hongwei says cartoon drawing of a chicken. Okay, I wonder what's this cartoon drawing that Hongwei saw before? Is this something that you saw before and it's now in your memory, a collection of your memory of the chicken? Jolene says, furry chicken or is that curry chicken? Sorry, I'm hungry as well at the moment. Kate says, people are hungry. Yeah, absolutely. So, this exercise, right? Why I ask you this question is because when they see your slides with some key terms, key words, people tend to associate it with some sort of visuals as well. And not all of us are meant the same, right? We're not built the same. Everyone has a different way of thinking how a chicken would look like. Yeah, a type of chicken. So some of you might have seen a real life rooster. Some of you may have visualized food, right? Chicken in the form of food. Some of you would have thought of a cartoon. And when you think about this word, I believe it's very rare that some of you would have envisioned it spelled out in your mind, like Chicken. No, right? Most of us thought of a visual, of a photo. And this is a clear example of why imagery is so important. Because as humans, we are actually visual creatures. Our brain processes words in the form of imagery too. And hence, we should use imagery because it's very powerful when it comes to show visual persuasion. So for example, let me tell you that we process images 60,000 times faster than words. Okay, we process images 60,000 times faster than words. I can do this exercise with you. Think about this. The word cybercrime, right? If you see this on a slide, cybercrime, okay, without any visuals, I wonder if this is more effective, or would you rather see something like this, okay, on your slide? So I chose another image to suggest how safe is your data. Okay, which one would be more effective, right? Is it the first one or is this second one? Okay, is it the first one or the second one? Which one did you feel was more, it was more impactful when you saw that key message about cybercrime or cybersecurity? The second one, right? Because it sort of forms a context in your mind and you know that, oh, it's a credit card and you're looking at your laptop, most likely it might suggest that we're making some payments online. So how can we make this data safe then? How can we make this transaction safe? Okay, that was just an example. Now I have this slide where it is quite a common thing as well when it comes to imagery, some of the problems that we face with imagery. I want you to take a look at this slide and tell me what feels so wrong about this slide. What is it about this slide that feels quite wrong? The person who tried to do this slide actually I believe this person tried to have some sort of shapes, okay? Some sort of shapes in terms of adding a design to this slide. But what is the key issue here? So think about that and just type in the chat for me. What is it that is not working for you when you see a slide like this, okay? Clement says, but it does not tell me anything. Yep, doesn't really tell much, okay? Number not in sequence, scattered all over. There's no chronology. Okay, there's no sequence as well. That's what Bharat says. Anyone else? Hongwei. Title should reflect on why contributor 4 is highlighted. Okay, thank you, Hongwei, for picking that up. Okay, so firstly, most of you mentioned there's no key point. I'm not really sure why there's no key point as well. Number two, it lacks imagery to bring the key message to life. Instead, I think there were some shapes in a form of an oval shape. And likely because the person actually maybe wanted circles, right? Round circle. But because the font to type in contributor, when you type out the whole thing is quite long, it ended up being oval. That's also possible. And like what Hongwei say, we don't know why is contributor 4 in a different color. Why? Right? So how can we improve this slide? If we have a little bit more context, how can we improve this slide? So let me show you in the next slide. So here we can tell them there are 9 contributing factors of X with contributor number 4 as the main contributor. And what we do here is that I have nine probably contributors, and we try to put for every contributor that we have here, we try to put the icons that are relevant. And then for contributor number 4, we actually highlighted it, amplified it by using the shade of blue. So this is just an example of how we can use imagery to try to bring your messages to life in a slide. Now, what imagery would you use to represent this concept? So just type in the chat for me. What imagery would you use to represent this concept? When you see the word teamwork, okay, suggest what kind of imagery would you use to convey this message? Okay, so just type in the chat for me. What imagery would you use to represent this concept? All right, so just give you a few seconds to just type out. What can you use? What kind of imagery would you use to represent this concept? Teamwork. It's a quite common concept when we see corporate decks or our CSR decks even. The value, the vision, the mission of the company. Okay, you just type in the chat, what imagery would you use to represent the word teamwork? How can we convey this? Okay, so keep your responses coming in. Okay, so let me just read it out. So Clement says, many hands put together into a huddle. Okay, a huddle. Running together at the start line. Kimho says, generic photo of people sat at a meeting table. Okay, Jocelyn, many people doing a common thing like team bonding activity. Jolene says, many hands together. Okay, like maybe putting many hands together. Okay, I can visualize. Clement, collaboration at the meeting with whiteboards filled with post-it notes. Possible? Yeah. Okay, Kate says, rowers in a boat. Okay, Hongwei actually sent us a link in the chat of the kind of imagery that he found for teamwork. Okay, so again, think of this word, teamwork. How can we explain it in a conventional manner? Usually in a typical business context, a lot of us might actually do that handshake partnership thing, or we will put that hands together photo in our presentation. But sometimes I feel it's like using Arial or Calibri for all of our presentations, for anything, for all kinds of document. And that might come off as sort of cliche sometimes, so it's already too common for people to see. So another alternative that you can do if you feel that it might be too cliche, okay, if you feel that it's too cliche, what you can do is to try to draw an analogy or use a teamwork in real life. So what does teamwork actually mean to you? You can even add that anecdote or story, an analogy that people can relate to, right? So I actually like where one of the participants mentioned was that Clement running together at the start line. I actually like that. Like we're all supporting each other to run together. Maybe that's how you want to convey the message of teamwork in a corporate setting. So again, Try to use other methods such as drawing an analogy, using a metaphor, and try to make it relevant to the audience so that it's easy for them to understand. Okay, so in our full day workshop, we actually do a lot of ways to come up with imagery and some of the alternatives. So not just photos, not just icons. We have examples like illustration, how we use visual words, how we use analogies, using AI even, etc. So we have a lot of tools. That's what we usually do. But for today, this was just an exercise how to get us started when it comes to imagery. Now I'll be moving on to the next section, which is the common pitfall when it comes to the layout. So layout, this is one of the key areas where a lot of us struggle because we may have all of the information, we may have all of the photos, but it's quite common to feel a little bit lost. Where to begin once you look at that blank PPT page, right? Okay, it's blank. I have all of the information. But what should I do next? Where do I go next? So ideally, you want to have a plan in mind first, because if you fail to plan right, it will be very difficult for us to actually create this presentation later on. And we recommend planning your layouts in order to save time and moving elements around repetitively. Some of us start with a design and then we add on the points later on. And what happens is that, oh, wait, I have another point. Oh, I have to change the design again. And you keep doing this back and forth process that takes a lot of time. But rather, let's get clear what your layout is going to be, okay, after you have all your points and images. So let's see how that might work. I want to show you some of the proven layouts that might work. So for 4:3 or 16:9 format of your slide, of your keynote. So if say you have 3 key messages, you might be able to adapt this, or 4 key themes, okay? You have different layouts here as well. So this is just an example of how proven layouts might work. So meaning to say, when people see this layout, it's much easier for them to digest the information when they see this kind of layout, okay? So split your slide into equal parts where possible and begin from there. And we recommend planning your layout by sketching out your slide first. So how do you do that? So how do you sketch your slide? So something like this, maybe you have a placeholder on top of your headline, a placeholder for the image, and then you have the information. Okay, if you cannot sketch on paper and digitize it, what you can do is actually doing it directly on your PowerPoint with placeholder boxes and text. And once you find out if this layout really works for you, in the future, you can save it as one of your slide masters, okay? Master slides in future. You don't need to create again from scratch. All right, so let's see how this looks like once it's done with some photos, images, the text, and our headline. Okay, so now I'll give you another example. Okay, what is ineffective about this slide, or how can we improve this slide? So just type in the chat for me, how can we improve this slide? Okay, how we can improve this slide? Just type in the chat for me, how can we improve this slide? Is there a way that we can improve this slide? Okay, just look at this slide. I give you a minute to just look through and see how we can improve this slide. Okay, some of you says the image is a little bit redundant at the moment. Use a table for the points perhaps. Taylor says image, read to convey the numerical figures such as 30% energy savings, etc. Okay, so thank you for sharing some of the ideas that you have on how to improve this slide. So let me just show you how we can, so far, what we've learned on the whole spill process, how we can further improve the slides, right? So let's take a look at the next portion of it. So here we have very clear points, right? I strip it down to the basic. And then what we do is to find relevant imagery. So I just put a placeholder. Okay, I want to use this green tick mark, BCA green mark, and another image for this slide. And now these points, these are my points at the bottom. Then we work out the layout. So do I want the earlier layout, the 5 points, or do I lay it out this way? Okay. And how might that look like in a final look? So final look, we work on the layout, right? And then afterwards, we try to do some design, but also a visual hierarchy. Which area do I want to amplify? So here you will notice I wanted to amplify prerequisites that must be met regardless of the overall scoring. So immediately I already know these are the prerequisites that I want that I want people to know. Okay. And then at least 30%. So that area, we try to put it in a bigger font, a higher a different typography, so that it is different from the supporting description, right? So I think this is so much better, an improvement of how the earlier slide might look like. Yes, okay. So I'll give you another example. How can we improve this slide further, right? So I strip it down again to the basics. I know this is quite common for us. So let me just show you how we can improve this, right? We have the headline. Okay, what we can do is these 3 points, we can think of other layouts, remember? So what is a proven layout? Could be like 3-column approach, and then we will add some icons on top. And then this flowchart that I have here, is there another way of doing it? Absolutely. So let's look at the next slide. So here we have the headline. I have added the imagery. It's now classified. We have categorized the information in this 3-column approach, and then we did this flow chart sort of. Now that is different, it looks very different at the bottom. But it doesn't really compete much for attention. We will still read from the top left to right. Okay, how do we digest the information in this kind of manner? So just type in the chat for me. What should take up the most space in the slide? If you were to tell these things to your spouse this week, what would take up the most space in the slide? Is it your electricity and gas bill, your mom called, she got a new pet, I have to work late on Tuesday, etc. So these are the things to tell my spouse this week. What should take up the most space in your slide? Okay, what do you think will take up the most space? Okay, just type in the chat for me. What do you think takes up the most space on this slide? Okay, what do you think is the key point? Yes, the answer that I was looking for, Dela. We might have to move to Canada. Isn't that a big thing? If someone tells you in your workplace you have an opportunity to work in Canada, you might be moving to another place. I think I'll get very excited to tell my spouse as well, right? Meme says half the page is my spouse's picture. Really? Okay. And what else do we have here? Okay, work late on Tuesday. So Hongwei, to you, the most important thing to tell your spouse is working late on Tuesday. Okay? So again, different purpose, I guess. Maybe that's really the key thing that you want to tell your audience. But if it's me, if it's my spouse, I think telling them about my work opportunity in Canada might be the big thing. So that will take up the most space in my slide. Okay, if I was presenting this slide to my spouse, right? I have an opportunity to work in Canada next year. And then the rest of the information, they have a less space that they will take up on this slide. Okay, so this is an example of visual hierarchy. The most important information, we try to give it more attention, more space as well. The last one that we will be going through is the common pitfall when it comes to the look. Okay, so which one would you want to receive? Okay, if you are the receiver of this note, you belong to me. Okay, just type in the chat. Do you prefer 1 or 2? 1 or 2? 1 or 2? Okay, if you were to receive this note, which one would you prefer, 1 or 2? Number 1, right? A lot of us would say number 1. And why is that so? Because this is an example of font psychology. We tend to associate some sort of emotions as well when it comes to seeing some of the fonts. And some fonts actually suggest credibility, etc. So this is just one example, okay, using font in how we can improve the look of our presentations. But in our full day workshops, we have other sections on how to improve the overall look of the presentation. It could be shapes, it could be colors, but today I can only talk to you about font because of the time that we have. However, think about it. Most of the slides anyway that we do have a lot of text. So what can we do with the text? Hierarchy. Think about the font hierarchy that you have. So we already learned about visual hierarchy. Can we try to apply that in fonts? So take a look at the next example. Okay, take a look at the next example. So I have this definition, I have this slide on the basics of project management. If I bold the sections or highlight or underline or put it in red font, is it any better? Yes or no? If I bold the sections or highlight or underline or put it in a red font, is it really any better? Yes or no? So just type in the chat. Okay. No, right? I see a lot of no's. Okay. Not really, it's quite scattered. Yeah, we feel this is quite scattered. And what we can do, right? Because now it's quite confusing, right? It's trying to highlight a lot of things, but it's very confusing. So what we can do then is to look at areas where it really needs to be amplified. So maybe we are talking about the key words of temporary and unique, right? It's a unique product, service, or result. So maybe these are the key areas that I want to highlight in this definition. Not everything needs to be in bold, in underline, in red, but what is the key thing that you want to amplify? Then that will be the main area to highlight. Okay, so if I want to further improve this slide, how it might look like will be something like this. Okay, basics of project management is temporary, etc. So I even add imagery here. I just made it consistent with the color look that I have. Okay, so this is what we did to further simplify. We tried to make the definition also very sufficient and to just bold where it's necessary. So where is the amplification? So I'm just going to give you one more example. Okay, so this example that I have here, how we can actually improve it further. So how can we amplify this key message? So it's very long, right? And what you notice is actually it's a code. So where can I amplify the key sections? Maybe it's about achieving performance level beyond our expectations. If that is so, I might even change it in a different color, right? I might change it in a different color to just highlight it, but not too much use of color. Using color functionally. Again, design functionally, not because of aesthetics. And then we use some imagery and shapes. Okay, we use some imagery and shapes to make it come up alive, right? If this is a testimonial, let's ask for permission. Can we ask Sarah for the image to do this testimonial, put it up on our page? We can also use other shapes like call out boxes to amplify the key message, the testimonial. Okay, these are some of the examples that we can do in terms to improve the look. On our full day workshop, sometimes it's 2-day workshop that we have, we deep dive on how to improve on the overall look, but that is the last step. So first we need to be very clear on the points, how to have imagery, the layout, and then the look. All right. So now before I continue, I just want to ask, can you relate on any of the common pitfalls? Which one was the most common pitfall to you? Number 1, was it a point? Too many points? Number 2, was it imagery, right? You cannot find the right photos. Or is it number 3, layout? You have a real struggle, right? When it comes to editing your points, how you to work out the layout with your text and visuals. Or was it number 4? Because you tend to design aesthetically rather than with a purpose. Is it 1, 2, 3, or 4 that you are able to relate to the most. Okay? Just type in the chat for me, which one do you relate to the most? Was it 1, point, number 2, imagery, 3, layout, or 4, the look? Okay. Right, so which of the common pitfalls do you relate to the most? Was it point, imagery, layout, or the look? Okay. So Hongwei says number 1, point, too many words, right? We already know that this is a real issue. A lot of us tend to have too many points, too many worded slides, even data heavy slides. Kate mentions the imagery and layout. Yes, I agree with you. Clement also says imagery and layout. Cheng Yin says imagery and layout needs a lot of time, so sometimes you give up. I hope you don't give up after today's session. I hope you manage to get very clear tips and techniques in order to help you when it comes to the imagery and layout. I know it was a crash course, but I hope that we managed to solve some of these issues. So the spill process, once again, begins with the story. What are your points? And then relevant imagery to add on. Working out the layout. You can look for inspiration on proven layout. Okay, or otherwise you can sketch the layout. How might that look like? Even test it out with some of your peers before you add it on your presentation. And then the final look. So designing with a purpose rather than just for aesthetics. Okay, so this was just a sneak peek of the framework that we typically deep dive in our full day workshop. And I know we have established all these issues. We've shared how slides can be cluttered with text, how key points can be very unclear. We spend too much time designing slides. And we also tried to provide the solutions, right? How you can clarify your messages with effective visuals. So the key messages into your visuals, how to have eye-grabbing visual presentations. I gave you a lot of before-after examples throughout the case studies. And we learned that there is actually a step-by-step way that we can do in order to create this effective visual presentation in no time, right? In lesser time, I would say, less time. So our agency's proven pure design process, we can actually revamp the slides in under 10 minutes. I've also done this myself after I went through the training. When I first went through the training, I immediately applied it in my work. So now, last time, if I have to do 10 slides in, say, maybe 4 hours, I have cut down my time as well because I followed this framework. So starting with a point, so stripping down just the points that I want, what's a relevant imagery for this point. Then I lay out all the information, and the last thing is the look. I don't spend so much time now designing and then adding points, designing and adding points. The design, the look, that can come at the end. Okay, so we teach with functionality in mind. Again, what is the purpose of your slide? Is it a keynote? Is it a slide document? A document report? What am I using it for? So therefore, what should I create? What kind of slides? Is it slide or is it a document? Okay, so we have to be very clear with the function, the purpose of our presentation. And I just want to let you know that it's very applicable for many contexts. So this is a couple of slides that is meant for lecture slides, university lecture slides. I also have a couple of slides, how we revamp it into, and this was an engineering slide, right? It's blueprint, very technical, complex. How can we further improve that slide using the spill framework? Now let's hear it from my colleague Yanni on how the consulting arm has used this framework and techniques to add value to our clients. Okay, Yanni, over to you.
Thanks, Christine. So one recent example that I have is actually this client that came to us and they said that, oh, our business, we are in the food catering business. So we want to supply like different food, meals, bento boxes to all different clients. And for the clients that they are talking to, one important thing for them is that they really want to know that all these ingredients that our client is getting is responsibly and ethically sourced. So they want to make sure that, the sources are ethical, they are not like using some suspicious things and causing problems to like the food quality or anything. So my client said, Yeni, but whenever I talk about this responsible and ethical sourcing thing, I feel like nobody really listens to me. Then I was like, okay, so why don't you show me your slide? So they showed me this slide. And then I was like, yeah, I kind of get why nobody is listening to you because I'm also not listening to you at this point in time. So what they'll do is they'll take all the information that they have about responsible and ethical sourcing of their ingredients, they will put it into the slide, and then when they present it, they will kind of go through like the points one by one, and it's essentially looking like they're just reading off some Wikipedia article. So it's very intense. And my client was like, oh, but I put in some pictures at the side. So then I was like, great, but that's not very helpful at this point in time because there's too many words on the slide. So what we did was that we used the pill process to revamp specifically the slide as well as the rest of their pitch deck. So when we are starting with the pill process, what we distilled from the point part is really that the key message here is that they source their ingredients from trusted suppliers. So these are people they have long-term relationships with, there's a certain code of conduct, it's ethical, it's sustainable, and they also wanted to highlight a few examples of the type of foods that they are getting from these suppliers. So that's essentially really all that it is. Everything else, if you strip it down, these are the key messages that are left. And then after that, we looked at their images and we thought of if they're sourcing ingredients, right, then definitely your images should be relevant in terms of showing the ingredients. For example, if you are cooking like pizza for catering, then the images of your ingredients shouldn't be that completed pizza because no one can really tell what's going on inside the pizza, right? So what we did was that we broke it down. Instead of putting pictures of their dishes, which look really great, we told them that, you should kind of have things that are relevant. So we put in pictures of the vegetables, the meat, even like the coffee and the tea that they're serving. Instead of showing it in a cup, we try to show it in its most original form. So it relates back to the main idea that they have here. And now that we have the point and the image, the next part that we went on to is the layout. And as you saw from the image part, they do have quite a few nice images of all these ingredients. Makes you feel a little bit hungry, right? When you look at all these nice vegetables and meat. So we wanted a layout that has ample space to showcase all the different images that we have. Also because the content itself is not the most exciting content in the world. So we wanted to use the images to kind of hook in people and get their attention, even as my client is presenting the slide itself. So this is the layout that we chose, and it's actually from one of the lists of examples that Christine showed earlier. So if you do have any, if you want to reference anything, then that was a really good cheat sheet that you could have. And lastly, we also applied the look. So focusing on, in terms of the visual hierarchy, their colors were black and red. So we did that for the background, and then we also adjusted the words so that, there is emphasis on the key message as the header. We have a short supporting text at the side just to highlight certain important points like the code of conduct and all that. And then we have these examples with supporting text, but the text was deliberately made a lot smaller so that people don't get distracted by that and they focus on the key message. And at the end of it all, this is the end product that we have. So the content is pretty much the same, just in terms of how we are looking at it, taking out some of the points that maybe were a bit too much, removing some of the additional text, and overall kind of just reorganizing a little bit, putting in the right images. And I think you will have something that's a lot more easy to digest. And it's also something that people are attracted to and they will want to find out more about instead of, just looking at a wall of text and then like they zone out, and that's how you lose your deals. Yeah, so this is just a quick example of how we are applying this also to client work. And I think Christine can also elaborate a little bit more on how this might work out for you as well. Yeah, back to you, Christine.
Okay, thank you so much, Yanni, for that sharing. I didn't realize how vegetable can look so good on a slide, right? It made me quite hungry as well. I know everyone's gonna get hungry on a Friday morning like this. So let me just go back to my slide. I'm tight. Okay, let me just. Okay, so thank you once again, Yanni, for sharing. I just want to let everyone know we have been conducting this course on visual persuasion or effective visual presentations for some of our trainings. We have been doing this for so many years, and I'm so happy to see that it has worked out so well, been proven this framework has been proven throughout different clients across different industries that we've been working with. So aside from the examples that we've shared, generic or even through the case study that Yanni has shared, I believe most of us here can apply the framework, that spill framework, immediately in our work starting today. I really feel that after you work out from today's session, it's something that you can immediately apply onto your slides, right? And if you don't know yet what HighSparks has been doing, we are actually working with global B2B brands to develop winning sales and go-to-market assets. If you need instantaneous help when it comes to your presentations, messaging, positioning, your pitch materials, you may actually engage our agency to work with you on your projects. So if you reach out to Jiayi and Noor, right, their information is on the screen, right on the screen, you can mention the code and you will get a special discount, right? You will get a special discount for this, for the services. So up to $250. So feel free to engage them if you need these services. And if you want to be like Yanni, who's an expert in creating effective presentations, right? The whole team, you may be keen to sign up for our one-day program. So we do have a one-day visual persuasion masterclass. You can join the wait list now. So this is going to be a public run. It's an online class via Zoom. And exclusively for our webinar attendees today, just indicate your interest in the testimonial form and you'll be able to receive the $50 promo code via email right after, okay? So if you wish to join this one-day master class, feel free to indicate the interest in the form at the very end, right? The testimonial form at the very end. However, if you wish to arrange a private and customized session, we can arrange for a consultation call. So you can actually reach out to my colleague Neem, who is also in the call today, in the session today. So feel free to reach out if you want a customized version, right? Maybe you have some case studies, some projects that you want to work on and you want to get trained on that, how we can further improve your presentations. Then you might want to do it, you know, as a customized workshop for the whole team. So yeah, feel free to arrange this consultation call and you can enjoy up to 5% discount rate for the first 5 teams. You may indicate the interest in the form. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to Nim. Yeah, Nimran. Yeah, he's in the room as well. And lastly, so I've come to the end of the whole freebies, okay? So this is the last one, the free cheat sheet. For all of the attendees today, you will leave empty-handed. You can scan the QR code. Please feel free to leave a feedback. And I will really appreciate it if you leave any feedback for me, even with the terms of the delivery or the whole crash course, so that we know how to further improve on the next sessions as well. Okay, so I hope this will not be the last webinar. We will probably be conducting a few more, and your feedback, I really appreciate it. It helps us to improve on different areas. Okay, so please scan the QR code, leave us a testimonial if you want to indicate your interest to join the public run of the one-day visual masterclass, one-day visual persuasion masterclass, or you want to do a customized session, or if you want to engage any of the services from our consultancy arm, feel free to put that in the form as well. So once you fill up the form, you will be able to download the free cheat sheet immediately. Yeah. So I'll just leave this on the screen. So feel free to scan that, fill it up. And meanwhile, if you have any other questions, just put it in the chat so that we can help to address these questions that you might have. If you're unable to scan the QR code, I also have it in the chat, okay? So you can click the link on the chat and that will lead you to the form, okay? If you are unable to scan the QR code, feel free to click on the link in the chat. If you have any other questions, feel free to just put it in the chat and I will help to address some of your queries, your interest. Okay, so feel free to just take a photo of the QR code while it's up there. Otherwise, if you have any questions, put it in the chat for us to address. And for the rest of us, if we need to leave, thank you once again for joining me in the 3-part webinar series. I know we've been together for the last 3 Fridays, so thank you so much for joining me in all of the sessions this February. Feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn, and I hope to see all of you again in future trainings or webinars here at HighSpark. Have a good weekend, everybody. Have a good Friday. So, any questions, just put in the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much. Bye. Bye, everyone. Team, I'll see you in the debrief. Bye.